be, I'm ignoring this. It will be, your titles are stripped. You are.
Dukedoms and H's formally revoked, according to the Daily Beast, by Prince William, then King William.
I guess pressure over the weekend on Charles to go further anyway. Because of course, by allowing...
So it finally happened. After years of whispers, tension, and royal warnings, King Charles did the unthinkable. The once patient monarch finally drew the line, and when the dust settled, Harry and Meghan were no longer Duke and Duchess. Gone were the crowns, the honors, the glamour. Now they're just Harry and Meghan, the couple who, in the eyes of many, pushed the royal family too far. Can you even imagine the shockwaves echoing through Buckingham Palace? It was inevitable, wasn't it? Years of drama, documentaries, and privacy podcasts filmed in multi-million-dollar California mansions, and now the fairy tale titles are gone for good. King Charles officially stripped them of their royal status. No more pretending to represent a monarchy they've criticized over and over again.
At his coronation, I mean, that is extraordinary. That shows you how far things have fallen. I don't think there is a way back.
And behind those palace walls, the whispers carried only one phrase: it's done. For King Charles III, this wasn't just anger. This was exhaustion, years of heartache, humiliation, and relentless public spectacle. The man who believed love could heal anything finally realized that patience was becoming poison. His hope for reconciliation had crumbled into royal fatigue. Every new scandal, every tell-all interview chipped away at not just the crown's dignity, but his faith in family itself. When Charles took the throne, many hoped he'd unite the royals again, a new era of peace and modern grace. Instead, his reign was haunted by two absentees who seemed to live off royal headlines from 6,000 miles away. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex had turned themselves into global sensations not for service, but for controversy. Every whisper, every tearful revelation became their weapon, and the monarchy their stage. Charles, the ever-forgiving father, tried to ignore it all: the Netflix deals, the podcast rants, even the memoir that turned family grief into profit.
Continued to use her HRH despite being ordered not to do so by the late Queen Elizabeth II. And they say that Prince William's own...
He's a father before he's a king, one courtier once sighed. But even a dude's father's love has limits, especially when every act of mercy becomes another headline. Then came the final betrayal: Meghan's use of her Royal Highness styling in private letters. A detail, but a deadly one. The late Queen had been promised this would never happen. Yet here it was, continuing in secret. For Charles, it wasn't just a breach of protocol, it was a wound straight through the heart of both monarchy and family. Charles agonized for months, torn between love and duty, between father and king. But the advisors around him, the old guard of the crown, were clear. The monarchy cannot look powerless. Every moment of indecision eroded confidence. The king had to act, and so, for once, he did. And with that quiet but resolute move, he ended years of speculation. No more half measures. Titles carry weight, and weight demands responsibility. The king had finally chosen to protect the crown, even if that meant protecting it from his own blood. When
full-time working royals or lead lives as private citizens. But you know what?
The whispers reached Montecito, Meghan refused to believe it. Her entire identity, her fame, her influence, her brand was wrapped in those four golden words: the Duchess of Sussex. The thought of losing them wasn't just alarming, it was terrifying. Her empire, her power, even her voice in global philanthropy depended on that title. Behind the scenes, panic set in. Late-night phone calls, frantic messages, PR teams working overtime. Meghan's camp went into crisis mode, drafted statements were tossed, allies silenced, emails reworded until dawn. She wanted to control the narrative, an insider said, but for once, she couldn't. The palace's decision wasn't up for debate, it was final. And that's what crushed her, not the loss itself, but the loss of control. Since stepping away, Meghan had built her image on freedom and reinvention, but now the monarchy had struck back with quiet vengeance. No words, no press conference, just royal silence, louder than any public statement. Friends say Meghan was blindsided not only by the decision, but by its timing. Her new lifestyle brand was just launching, meant to position her as a global tastemaker. Investors were watching closely, waiting to see how much royal glitter still clung to her. And then, this. Overnight, the woman once hailed as Hollywood's Duchess faced a brutal reality. Without the crown, the spotlight fades fast. Harry, ever the loyal husband, tried to stay calm. He urged patience, compassion, understanding, but even he looked shaken. He knew exactly what this meant, not just for their image, but for who they were. Without those titles, they weren't the Duke and Duchess anymore. They were just Harry and Meghan. And in the cold world of fame and influence, names matter. In Montecito, disbelief turned to defiance.
Will a divorce change things? Maybe. But remember, Prince William set Harry these very...
Meghan wasn't about to surrender quietly. If the palace wanted a power play, she'd answer not with silence, but with strategy. Her game wasn't over. It was evolving. Meanwhile, Prince William, the man who had stayed silent through it all, had finally reached his breaking point. The interviews, the accusations, the endless documentaries painting his family as villains, he'd endured it long enough. Now he was ready to act. Sources whispered that behind Kensington Palace's pristine doors, William's patience hardened into resolve. No shouting, no emotion, just a plan. He began secret meetings with advisors, determined to end what he quietly called the chaos chapter. For William, the institution had to survive, even if it meant tough love for his brother. He proposed something drastic, a letters patent, a royal decree that could rewrite the monarchy's structure for generations. It wouldn't just affect Harry and Meghan, even Prince Andrew and the extended Yorks would feel its sting. Painful, but necessary, one insider murmured. Better to cut once and heal than to bleed. Forever. As William watched every scandal turn royal honor into Hollywood gossip, he knew the monarchy was in danger. If we don't act now, he reportedly told his father, we might lose control forever. It wasn't rebellion, it was preservation. The heir, preparing for the throne, determined to inherit stability, not scandal. The public had already chosen sides. Across Britain, patience had run out. What once was sympathy had curdled into frustration. People asked the same question again and again. How can two people who rejected royal duty still profit from it? The tabloids called it the royal circus. Memes mocked the contradictions. Even longtime loyalists to the crown began to question why Harry and Meghan's names still sat on the official royal website.
A major blitz in which he'll strip a series of outer royals of their titles. So what would that mean for Princess Beatrice?
Well, she's married to Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi, who's Italian.
The monarchy must mean something, one columnist wrote sharply. If everyone can claim a crown when it suits them, the crown itself loses meaning. And that hit home. The public's anger wasn't just about behavior, it was about fairness. When Prince Andrew lost his honors after scandal, many saw that as justice. You can't make one rule for Andrew and another for Meghan, said one Westminster aide. Otherwise, it's not monarchy, it's mockery. Every time Meghan used her Duchess title at a Hollywood gala, headlines back home exploded. What she saw as branding, the public saw as exploitation. The sacred mystique of royalty had been turned into a sales pitch. Inside the palace, that was unforgivable. The monarchy thrives on dignity, not drama. And Meghan's California Duchess persona had crossed the final line. As one royal biographer coldly noted, that's not a duchess, that's a marketer. King Charles, ever haunted by his mother's wisdom, remembered her warning, the crown only survives when it remains above commerce. And now, watching his daughter-in-law use royal lineage like a trademark, he knew the line. He had to be drawn. Meghan's world of glimmering celebrity had become everything the monarchy feared a brand, not a birthright. What she saw as empowerment, the palace saw as exploitation. Charles's patience, like the queen's before him, had finally snapped. When Harry caught wind that his father was preparing to act, he rushed to intervene.
Link that was so personal was Catherine. It was like, do not.
He begged for a meeting, man to man, father to son. It wasn't just desperation, it was strategy. You're punishing the first biracial duchess, he reportedly pleaded. History will remember this. The words were meant to sting to guilt, a monarch who had always wrestled between compassion and command. But this time, even that emotional plea fell on deaf ears. Behind palace doors, advisors held firm. This is not about color, it's about conduct. The monarchy couldn't run on fear of bad headlines anymore. If rules bent for emotion, there would be no monarchy left to defend. Charles still hesitated. He knew the media, firestorm that awaited him. In an age where perception trumps truth, he risked being painted as cruel, even bigoted. But the alternative, doing nothing, was far worse. For days, he barely slept. Friends said he was torn in two, the father aching for peace, the king knowing peace was impossible. The monarchy had survived wars and scandals, but not indecision, so this time, he made a choice. Emotion would no longer rule the crown. Though it looked like a royal decision, the truth ran deeper. Behind Westminster's velvet curtains, Parliament had quietly entered the game. For months, murmurs spread through political circles. Lawmakers were furious that the monarchy's silence had damaged public trust. We cannot have royals undermining the crown from abroad, one senior MP was overheard saying. For decades, politicians had kept out of palace affairs a sacred boundary. But this time, enough was enough. Reports soon leaked of a draft proposal nicknamed the Royal Titles Bill, a measure that would let the king revoke titles if they were used for personal profit or brought dishonor. It was unprecedented.
Some of the suggestions are not just about Andrew and Fergie and their daughters, but also Prince Harry and Meghan, which will obviously be quite distressing for them. That could be effectively a bit of revenge on that sort of side. But that's what happened, and it could be coming within early weeks of King William V is what he would.
But to many inside Westminster, it was long overdue. This isn't revenge, an official insisted. It's preservation. You can't modernize a monarchy that refuses to defend itself. Then the irony twisted deeper. Before Harry and Meghan, the royal family's biggest scandal was Prince Andrew. His disgrace had nearly fractured the monarchy, yet he had kept his title. That leniency, critics said, was the crown's biggest mistake. You can't punish one child lightly and another not at all. Charles knew it. The hypocrisy had haunted the family for years. So this time, he was determined. No exceptions. Andrew, Harry, Meghan, all were under the same royal microscope. You either serve the crown, one advisor said, or you don't. It was a brutal but necessary standard. No more royal privilege without purpose. No more titles without duty. The monarchy had learned from Andrew's shadow, and it was done forgiving rebellion disguised as modernity. The news exploded across the world. Twitter, TikTok, every social feed lit up with outrage and applause. Some hailed King Charles as the monarch who saved the institution. Others screamed bias and cruelty. But one thing was undeniable: the crown had taken back control. Even across the Atlantic, the media tide had turned. American talk shows no longer fawned, they questioned. Have Harry and Meghan overplayed the victim card? Asked one host. Even US Weekly and People magazine, once their strongest allies, switched sides. Their covers now favored William and Kate. The Hollywood honeymoon was officially over. In Montecito, the fallout was seismic. Meghan's team drafted polished statements about resilience and new beginnings, but the sparkle was gone. Without the Duchess title, her upcoming brand launch suddenly looked shaky. Sponsors hesitated, investors pulled back, and analysts whispered, without royalty, she's just another celebrity. Behind closed doors, she was said to be fuming. Friends revealed shouting, slammed phones, even tears. They underestimated me, she reportedly said. They'll regret this. But this time, the palace didn't respond. They'd said all they needed to by saying nothing at all. Meanwhile, Charles found an odd sense of peace. For years, he'd been torn between being a father and being a king. But finally, the two could coexist because he'd acted in both love and duty. Insiders say that after signing the final order, he stood by the window of his study, staring at the gardens below, whispering to himself, "For Mummy, it was done." The monarchy had weathered scandal after scandal, but this was different. It wasn't about punishing a couple. It was about redefining royalty for the modern age. As one palace source summed it up perfectly, the monarchy crown doesn't bend for headlines. Headlines bend for the crown. And that's the story the world woke up to: a tale of pride, pain, and power. Meghan's Hollywood empire shaking under the weight of a single royal decree. Harry's loyalty torn between love and lineage. A father finally choosing the throne over turmoil. In the end, the Sussex saga wasn't just about titles, it was about legacy. And for King Charles, restoring that legacy meant proving one final truth. The monarchy might be ancient, but it still knows how to protect itself. The Duchess without a duchy, the prince without protection. And a king who, after years of silence, finally found his voice not in anger, not in interviews, but in one historic act of quiet authority.